Okay, I'll quickly run back through then what got lost before. So once again, my name is Mickey Dietrich. I'm with the Tug Hill Commission, and in the past I was a president of the GIS Association for New York State, and then recently I actually took a new position at the Tug Hill Commission. I was their GIS specialist for about the past 15 years or so, and now I'm the River Area Council of Government, and I'm a municipal management consultant, which is kind of like a project manager, and I work primarily with a group of communities that are looking to work together for shared services, and they so right now I have 6 communities. So we got Champion, Wilna, Carthage, the village of Carthage, village of West Carthage, village of DeFerrier, and town of Lowville. And those are the communities that I kind of oversee and help be kind of their project manager, help them with projects that they're working on, more related to regional projects. But because of this position is what got me interested in doing data-driven local government similarities, trying to find similarities amongst different local governments so that they can work together in shared services. So with that, this is the Council of Government, so in the Tug Hill region, and this is kind of map showing that. And so you'll see in the pink area is the River Area Council of Governments, and that is you'll see the Wilna, Champion listed there, and also the town of Lowville, because this data was run more on a town basis than it was a village basis. But town of Lowville was a community that just joined not that long ago, and so there were questions, how does town of Lowville fit in with, say, Wilna and Champion? So that kind of got my interest in looking at data and looking at populations and demographics to see if there's a correlation between Lowville and Champion and Wilna that made sense there. Now, not related to the census information, but the Black River does connect Lowville all the way up to like the Carthage area to Wilna and Champion, as well as there's an old railroad bed that also runs up to there. So there are a couple other factors there that did make sense. But anyways, this is what really got me started into looking at the census information and some other data as well. So there's a 4-county study area here. There's one Jefferson County, Lewis County, Oneida County, and Oswego County. And you can still see the Council of Governments shown there, shown up for the Tug Hill region. But I wanted to expand it a little bit, so I just did it to the 4-county area to run through the analysis part of this. So, and then right here, if you just kind of focus on the center of these 4 counties, you'll see the brown patch in there. That's kind of the core Tug Hill area. And you'll kind of see that as we move along that there's a council of government called the Cooperative Tug Hill Council of Government that kind of covers that area, and they share a lot of similar characteristics. They're more rural type communities, and so you'll kind of see some of that as we go through the presentation today. So for criteria, there's basically 5 criteria that I wanted to hit. So one was housing. That was using the census information. Same thing with people or demographics. Same type of thing. We're looking at the census data there, and employment. And then for financial, I looked at the state comptroller's office. It has like the budgets that were submitted by municipalities. So I just chose 1 year. I mean, for something like that, you probably want to do maybe several years and average that out to get a better estimate of things. And then the other one I chose was land use, so that was using the NRLCD 2011 data, and I basically just converted it over to a polygon vector file, and then broke out all the raster information, or not the land use information out of that by percentages for each town. So housing. So we have the criteria used for the housing was seasonal housing. That at least lets you know where there's recreational opportunities taking place, what things might connect those communities related to that, like tourism and that recreation aspect. People per housing unit. One of the things I want to look at there is if you got a high number of people per housing unit, maybe you have a shortage of housing in your area. So that might be an issue that some communities might face together. Rental vacancy, that might be something where communities have a lot of housing units or rentals, but the population maybe has shifted. So now they have their own issues of trying to maybe fill those vacancies. Now sometimes seasonal rental properties can, play a factor in that, with that type of thing also. So owner-occupied housing, and then home values was the last criteria used there. So seasonal housing. So you can see up there, you got 1, 2, and 3 are kind of all grouped together. So that's, Cape Vincent, Lyme, and Henderson. So all along Lake Ontario, which doesn't surprise me with them having a lot of seasonal housing along the lake there. And then the other group is 4, 5, 6, and 9, which is kind of that core Tug Hill area. So that's, town of Worth, Montague, Osceola, and Redfield there. And, they're a little bit different. They're not on the water, but they're right in the core forest area. So there's a lot of camps, hunting camps, recreational camps for snowmobiling, that type of thing in that area. And then in number 7 is the town of Gregg, which has Branningham Lake on it, which is a very highly populated, seasonal lake, where they've got a lot of activity up in there related to that. So that's what's driving that for town of Gregg. And then the other one's the town of Forestport, which also has several lakes there too that have a lot of camps on them. So anyways, those communities, you can start to see potential groupings of communities that might have similar characteristics or just related to seasonal housing, maybe tourism, that maybe it might make sense for them to work together. So on Tug Hill, for instance, this is what April looks like on Tug Hill. And, with those core communities. And then this is what, those areas along Lake Ontario might look like in April. And I know for a fact that I was up on Tug Hill riding in April, and there was still quite a bit of snow up on the hill up further there. So they had quite the snowpack, but yet you could be kayaking down in the lower areas off from the hill. So a lot of different types of recreational opportunities, as well as issues faced by these communities. So people per housing unit. So a rating of less than 10. So these are areas that actually have a low number of people per housing unit. So that's what that rating in the top left kind of says. A rating is less than or equal to 2. And I'll mention that I used Excel for doing a lot of these correlations with the data, and then just tied it back into the town data file I had. So in this case, and then I came up with a rating system based off from that. So anything with less than or equal to 2, which is shown on this map, which once again you kind of see that core area again on Tug Hill, the 6, 7, 11, and 8 that you see on there. And, that doesn't surprise me. That's very rural. I mean, Montague only has a population of 70-something people, I think, in it. And, so it doesn't take much for housing units to have a very low number of people per housing unit there. And then, a lot of them you also see as seasonal, too, because there's a lot of housing units there, but people might be seasonal and not there all the time. So that's also factoring into some of those things. So that's why you see still things like Cape Vincent, Lyme, and Henderson up there, 3, 4, and 5, still kind of showing up there with that. So that's one way to look at it. And then the lowest one, I have a rating of 0. So basically, if it had a 0, it was basically the lowest one on the scale. And so you'll see that town of Montague, and like I mentioned already, they have a very small population, so it doesn't take much for them to have more housing units than they do people there in Montague. And they have a lot of seasonal camps and stuff like that in that area. That also plays a factor. And, up on Montague, there's a lot of, because of the snowfalls, there's been a lot of abandonment, too, also that's happened with some homes in the past that, people just left because a lot of them tried to make a go of doing farming up there way back in the day. But because of the heavy snow that they get up there, that makes it very difficult. And then, some people have just vacated over the years, and the buildings have been left there. So people per housing unit. Now on the other side of the factor was, somebody that has a high number of people per housing unit. So town of Luray, which some of you might already guess, but that's right next to Fort Drum. They have obviously a lot of number of people per housing unit because they have a lot of that Fort Drum population will live right in that area in town of Luray. And then you'll see like town of Marcy, which is down near Utica and Rome, and the town of Oswego, which has the city of Oswego, and also SUNY Oswego, the college is there and stuff. So, those are some of the things that are driving those factors there. So they might, basically that could be telling you that, hey, we got a shortage of housing in those areas if you have a high number of people per housing unit in there. And owner-occupied housing. So this is the, it's looking at the number of people who actually own their own home housing units, and where the owner actually lives within that housing unit. And you can see that the rating is less than or equal to 2. So this means that there's a very low number of owner-occupied housing units. And you'll see town of Luray, and that's because most of them are rental properties in town of Luray on purpose for housing for, Fort Drum soldiers in that area. So, the Fort Drum plays a huge key for town of Luray. And I'd have to say town of Luray is kind of that outlier in some of this because they do have Fort Drum right there, and they're driven a lot by Fort Drum in that area. And then the next one I looked at was people, or demographics. And that's back in the day when I guess I had hair. So we got the 2010 population, the 2010 median age. We looked at, non-white, so we're trying to look at diversity. Ones that maybe there's no family, they're single. Under 18, population that's under 18, population over 65. Just trying to look at some different characteristics, because sometimes in these categories, for instance, it's duplicate. So if you have under 18, you already know what the thing would be over 18, for instance. Then you're kind of working against yourself. So you got to kind of just choose one category and stick with that. So these are the ones that kind of chose out for the people and the demographic part of things. So for population, for instance, a rating of greater than or equal to 8 meant that there was a high, that they had some of the higher populations, which, makes a lot of sense here. You got Luray again, but then you got 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all down near like Utica, Rome area, just below Utica and Rome. But there's a group now, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can start to see some correlation there related to population. So once again, once again, this is all stuff that's just trying to find some sort of correlation, trying to help communities find other ones that might be having similar issues or similar characteristics with each other, so they can reach out about shared services or working together on things. And then, here's the population on the other side. So this rating was less than or equal to 1. And one of the reasons there's such a big gap between less than or equal to 1 rating and the other one, which was I think 7 or 8, is because some of the populations are just so large that it puts a bigger gap between the smaller populated communities. But you can see like the core Tug Hill Forest region right there is pretty well all covered in there for having very rural areas, real low populations. You can kind of start to see that. So all the ones that have the little circles with the numbers on them right now, those are all part of the Cooperative Tug Hill Council of Governments. So they all work together. And that's the boundary of it right there. So that's the Cooperative Tug Hill Council. So you can, it's just trying to take some of this information, trying to find things that make sense for these communities and working together. So now, so we're looking at, looking at it for diversity here. So, this doesn't surprise me. Town of Luray is number 2 again. Fort Drum, you have a lot of diversity within Fort Drum. So that makes sense. Town of Cape Vincent, I'm not exactly sure on that one. I believe that they do have a lot of farms up in that area, so it might be maybe some of the Mexican population and stuff like that up in that area that might be being a factor in that also. And then, so then, there's, the populations, with a higher number over, the age of 65, for instance, which, those retirees lots of times will go to those seasonal areas. So like 1, 2, and 3 you see there. And then some of the others are kind of more scattered about a little bit. But once again, seasonal you will notice, though, that there's not a lot of them in the core Tug Hill region. So that kind of tells me that there's more of a younger population that are doing the recreation in that core Tug Hill area of like Osceola, Montague, Worth, and Redfield in that area, because you do not see, and that's probably because of the snow loads. Not too many people are probably going to handle being up there in the snow. So that's more, it looks like driven more by also the type of recreation. So, snowmobiling, that type of thing. It's going to be probably a little bit more for the younger crowd, and then being on the lake and enjoying the lake and that type of thing is going to be a little bit more for the older crowd. So, you can start to see some things coming through with that also that can help. And my daughter loves taking pictures of me and making me look old or have bunny ears or that type of thing. But there I am. I don't know if I'll look that good when I'm over 65, but we'll see. So the next thing we looked at was employment. So, looked at armed forces, because that's one of the big driving factors in our area is, the military with Fort Drum. So we wanted to look at armed forces. We looked at unemployment, workers in private industry, and self-employed, unpaid down towards the bottom, for instance, there, that's, lots of times related to farm workers, family-owned farms, that type of thing. We looked at government workers, nonprofit. And so, armed forces, not too surprising again there. But you see Wilna is now in there with Town of Luray. Town of Hounsfield, actually, a lot of the officers for Fort Drum live over in Town of Hounsfield in the village of Sackett's Harbor. So that's what was kind of driving those factors there. Unemployment, looking at the ones with a higher unemployment rate there. You'll see, actually, no, I take that back. Yeah, so you'll see with the unemployment there, you kind of got some of the communities up above there being factored in. So once again, just trying to find groups, but I start looking at, like I said, Luray's kind of its own little thing being next to Fort Drum, but I start looking and seeing like 3, 4, 5, and 6, for instance, coming in together there. That definitely was. You start to see a grouping kind of taking place there. And then government worker. So then there you have, where are your government employees? Now I will say 6 and 7, Montague and Worth, because their populations are so small, that it only takes just a handful of government workers to be in those communities to make their numbers go up and have a higher rating, because it's based kind of on the percentage of those populations. So, so those are kind of potentially like outliers there. But you still see kind of those communities right in there where you got more government workers being in those areas, and Luray, once again, not surprising there. And then the other part was the financial. So this is where we use the state comptroller thing. So with the budgets and stuff that are submitted by the municipalities there, we're looking at, real property tax revenue, local revenue, total revenue, expenditures, those type of things here is what we're looking at. And so one thing I would like to just mention, though, is with the financial ratings, they're based upon just 1 year of financial data. So, a budget for 1 year for these municipalities, if they had a major project being funded, like a water or sewer project or major road repairs or, purchase of, say, a large piece of equipment, like a brand new plow truck or something like that, that's going to drive up change the budget numbers for that 1 year. But that's why I said kind of looking at it through several years would give you a better idea and find, maybe a little more correlation between those communities. But this I just had for the 1 year because this project's kind of going to be an ongoing thing that we continue to keep working on and modifying and adding to it. So this is just kind of the first shot at it, just to see if something like this was possible. So here, real property tax revenue, this is where a lot of communities get a lot of their, revenue and stuff from the real property taxes. And so you can kind of see over in Oswego County, there's a high number of communities there that fall in that area. And then, there's a little bit down by the Utica-Rome, just south of the Utica-Rome area there. And so now real property tax revenue, where they don't get don't get as much based upon the percentage of their overall budget from the tax revenue. So reasons for lower, real property tax revenue, like for instance, Town of Lee is $35,000. Well, they don't have property tax for the residents there. So that's why theirs is so low and what they bring in for their property tax revenue. They rely a lot more on sales tax revenue. So that's what's going on there. But even like up in like Martinsburg, you got the wind farm, for instance, up in there, and that has helped steady property tax in that town, for instance. So it's been able to keep them low there because of the money that they get generated through having the windmills in the town of Martinsburg. So, there's definitely a lot of different factors, and you can kind of see it's a little bit hard for the grouping. I mean, you can see some grouping going on, but it's a little bit more difficult when you're just looking at one aspect of the financial part here. And then, general government expenditures. So this is just in general, the expenditures. But like I said, that can be driven by a major project, purchase of equipment. But, Town of Luray, for instance, is just a very, very busy town with a lot going on. So obviously they're on there. They're going to have a lot more expenditures because they have they also have a higher population and services that need to be provided. So, once again, we're just kind of looking at the general government expenditures. Transportation expenditures. So this is those areas that had a higher amount of expenditures for their transportation in that budget year, and then it was the budget year of 2016. So like I said, some of these communities that might be out there as an outlier or whatever, they could have had something major going on, like a purchase of a plow truck or something like that. Could have taken place that they had planned on originally, and then that expenditure happened in that year. So there's a lot more behind it than just seeing it, but just trying to find some commonalities and stuff with this stuff is important. Of course, the one thing I found a way that I think a lot of these governments could save on transportation, and we'll see if this works here. Oh, maybe it's not going to work. This is my thing that's saving on transportation. The best part is when trucks pass me while I was going down the road doing this, and an older couple were in there, and one lady was just laughing her head off at me as they went down the road past me, and I didn't even know they were there until they went by. But anyways, so that was my idea to help with transportation. But back to the thing here, so land use. So So the next thing we looked at was the land use. So taking that NRLCD 2011 data, we did some conversions over to put it into a vector format. And then we basically clipped it with all the towns and then basically added up the percentages of each land use. And then each land use was then correlated, to other towns based upon that, trying to find where those correlations were. So we looked at, water, developed area, barren forest, shrubland, herbaceous, all those that are listed there, and trying to look at the correlations related to land use. So for forest on the left there, there's not as much forest land. Those land uses, you'll see those that grouping over there of municipalities, and then over on the right is the areas with a high level of forest land, which makes sense. That's the core Tug Hill Forest area, and then it's kind of creeping over to where the Adirondack Park comes into Lewis County. So you can definitely see the connection there in that one. And then the other one was, planted, cultivated, some more like agricultural. So it should be basically almost reversed a little bit from the previous slide. But the one interesting thing here was more on the right where it says a rating of greater than or equal to 6. It's kind of showing those areas that have a little more agricultural. And you'll start to see, for instance, there'll be town of Lowville, Denmark, Champion, and then there's Rutland over here, and town of Wilderness that's up here. But, you have a group of these communities that keep going up and out through here to like the town of Hounsfield. And those communities are all grouped in there together. And you also see down in Oneida County, you start to see down in here. So based upon, agricultural, there might be a higher level agricultural down in that area, down the southwest part of Oneida County down there. And then rural, which, basically, it's looking at where there's those developed areas and that type of thing taking place. And you can actually see over here on the left, there's Lowville now. And remember, they're part of that River Area Council of Government, and they joined Champion and Wilma, which is up here. So when you're looking at it from that aspect, there's not a lot of other communities like them, and you'll see that Lowville did actually fit into that category. So once again, there is a connection. We're starting to see that connection of Lowville being a part of that River Area Council of Government. And then over here on the right, it's just all over the map basically at that point. As far as being more like rural type areas. And then, so here's the Hounsfield comparison. So I wanted to find communities that were similar to the town of Hounsfield. So, so there's Hounsfield highlighted in the green with the 1. And you'll see, there's town of Brownville, town of Lyme, town of Clayton, and town of Henderson. All those, when I ran the correlation, had similar characteristics. Now this is overall. So this is taking all 5 of those other categories that we kind of just run through individually and saying which community. So what I found is if there was a rating of where they had 60% or higher, then there was some sort of strong correlation in at least probably 2 to 3 of the categories there that we use for criteria. So that started giving me a sense that these are communities that might share a lot in common. So Hounsfield, and you'll see now also we start getting that grouping now. And so looking at everything overall, I can see, there's a group of communities right there that potentially might have stuff in common. So if I was a supervisor in one of those communities, I might want to talk to the supervisor in one of these other ones just to see if they're facing similar issues or have things that they would like to work on together in a more regional aspect. And then there's the Lowville comparison. So there's town of Lowville. So that was one I just mentioned, joining the River Area Council of Governments. And so then you'll start to see that these are other communities that kind of lined up with Lowville. So you'll see like Denmark, for instance, is number 5. 4 is the town of Champion, which is part of that River Area Council of Governments. And then the town of Rutland, too, there in number 3. So you can start to see, and they're kind of grouped together there where they have a grouping. But, for a community like town of Lowville, for instance, if they saw, well, hey, there's another community, down there, and sliding, or, are they having similar issues? It's just a way to connect with them, just to see, maybe it's not any regional shared services that are going to take place, but they might be having similar issues or have maybe tackled similar issues as to what they have. And so it might be a way to just contact them and see how they're handling things. And that's, I think one of the things is just trying to find ways for communities to share with each other, and those that have similar issues and that they're facing, that's where this could be handy, so they know who to contact, and maybe are they similar in nature to them. So just like town of Brownville up in here, to the town of Lowville, I mean, normally I wouldn't see that correlation myself, but there definitely is something there that, they have similar, in which, they do have a village, like the village of Brownville and stuff there, and so they have some villages too, and the town of Lowville has villages, which also, I think, plays a factor into that. So, and then, so basically, I think I got us all caught back up here pretty much. But, how similar are you to your neighbor? That's it. And it's not to say that just because you aren't similar to another community nearby or somewhere else doesn't mean that you still don't share maybe opportunities to work together or anything like that. What this was just meant to do is just try to help you find those communities where, yes, they're facing the same issue related to, maybe they have a high number of people per housing units and they don't have enough housing, and how are they trying to tackle those issues? And I'm having that same issue myself in this community that I'm part of, and that type of thing. Or are there ways that we can work together in a regional aspect, because we're very similar in what we do and what our demographics are or our populations are. So, I mean, that's all I have for right now. I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you have if you want to send them across on the chat. But like I said, I think I got us back on time here. So. And if there's no questions, feel free to reach out to me if you do have questions later and you think about them. And otherwise, I appreciate you sitting in today, and sorry for the technical difficulties there in the beginning. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.